Hello, everyone. We're about to get started. So I invite you to take your seats. Hello, welcome, welcome. Ya tengo además. Esto va, no se ve bien ahí. I'm trying to get the best angle on this thing. All right. Thank you, everyone. First of all, thank you to the People's Forum for always being a space in solidarity with us. Yesterday we had El Grito de Lares commemorated as well here, thankfully. And today is part of a continued struggle for land rights in Puerto Rico. As many of you know, Puerto Rico is a colony of the United States. And part of that colonial structure is what not only impedes us from guaranteeing land and land access, but also continuously displaces us, pushes us out to other spaces. And tomorrow we're going to have a panel talking about how from those spaces that we thought were secure, whether it's Florida or New York, we're also being pushed out because we keep being the people that are not wanted and made invisible. So again, thank you for being here. Today, we are launching the land rights campaign for Puerto Rico. We've been running it for 2 years, and I'll talk to you about that, but it's the first public launch of the campaign. And so I'm this way, yes. And let's see if it works. It does not want to work. Él me dijo que era ahí. Ay, Dios mío. Ahí está. Okay. So as I mentioned, today is our lunch. We're going forward. We are going to present a community-led climate solution which secures land, secures stewardship, so that families and food systems can thrive where they live. So a little bit, and I was told that this needed to happen, so that's why that's there. But the reality is that this is all part of a huge team of support of farmers. We have an advisory board that has more than 50 agroecological projects that are with us constantly. We have Jesus here from Boricua, Marissa, you'll hear from her, Guakiá. We have Nestor somewhere around here taking pictures, and Nestor has been an ally since before the Institute was incorporated. We have Sama, Soeli from the Soils Museum, Maria Angeli from La Maraña. So it's truly, truly a joint effort in terms of none of this would be possible if it weren't because we were all working towards the same goal, and we're all looking forward to improving quality of life for Puerto Ricans. So that's my protest to that slide. All right, so who are we and who's doing this lunch thing, right? So for those of you that haven't heard, and I can't do this. Let's see if I can. Hello? Okay, ahora sí. Whew. Yeah. Okay, so we are the Agroecology Institute of Puerto Rico, and the Agroecology Institute of Puerto Rico was born out of hundreds of conversations with farmers in Puerto Rico and decades of work and research. What we heard and what we gathered was that farmers needed a vehicle to secure land, to secure resources, and to support them in doing the things that they couldn't, wouldn't, or didn't want to do. So how do we make sure that we had that support system, that backbone, while people were doing what's truly important, which is having their hands in the land and maintaining culture and maintaining seeds, right? So IALA, the Institute for Agroecology, was born to sustain and support communities within the Puerto Rican agricultural landscape. And the way we do it, and this is really interesting, the first time we had a mission, we had to do our mission, and you know how when you incorporate, you have to go to the Department of State and you have to have this mission, and you know, it's always a little wonky. So we reworked this mission with the farmers that work with us. And through that process, after like 2 years of back and forth, the first thing that came out was we need to understand agroecological initiatives. That was an imperative. And at first I was just like, but why? We know you guys. We know you. Why does it have to be in the mission? It's like, no, because understanding us, getting to know us is part of building that trust. It's part of strengthening our relationships together, working and growing together in the places that we stay. And that's why that became the first part of our mission, to understand and to support agroecological initiatives in any way that they deem necessary or esteem necessary, okay? So, vision. What do we see with this mission accomplished? And that is an agroecological matrix, truly a patchwork of conservation, of watersheds, or food systems, of healthy people and communities working towards Buen Vivir. And how do we do it? Well, one, it is very difficult to try to maintain a flexible structure within two state powers. We have the local and we have the federal that we have to constantly kind of dance around, right? In the case of the Institute for Agroecology, what we did is we created 3 specific programs where we fit, or try to fit, to the best of our abilities, what each one of the projects or initiatives needs. And these are not silos, they're integrated, so that makes it extra messy and fun for my team. And they're always like, but what is it supposed, what's written? I'm like, nothing's written. So we have Caracoles, and Caracoles is inspired on the Zapatista movement. The Zapatista movement, the Caracoles are the community centers, they're the heart. And the caracoles can be themed, so it could be a caracol that's based on family relationships. It can be a caracol that's based on economic relationships. And it can be huge. One of the caracoles is as big as is kind of half of Chiapas state. But it could be really, really condensed and tiny, specifically towards a geographic proximity. So caracoles are based on relationships, whether it's geographic, economic, or emotional, okay? And that's how we support communities. Whether a community is, all of a sudden we're working with a group, and they have brigades from Calle to Peñuelas, and we're like, why? They're so far apart, but that's the love that's there, and that's the relationship and the commitment that's there. Ujamaa, and that's from the 7 principles, Ujamaa is cooperative economics. And one of the things that we realize is that we need to not only build, but manage our own resources and make our own economies within our farms and within the communities. So Ujamaa is that part of how we build an economy for ourselves, how we build and have indicators for ourselves. And lastly, and this one kind of cuts across everything that we do, which is participatory action research. And that the center of that is Gran Batey. And for those of you that don't know, shameless plug, this is our coffee in the farm of Gran Batey. And Gran Batey is a research center that's focusing on how do we do that transition from a conventional farm, which it was, towards an agroecological farm, maintaining the ties with the neighboring farmers that still use conventional methods, okay? So, this is what it looks like on the map, because we do not necessarily support a farm or an individual. We work with initiatives that are part of networks that weave together and make this beautiful fabric of different organizations. We have been able to support more than 150 initiatives in Puerto Rico that are all tied together in some level, all the way down from the farm to networks of networks, okay? And why land rights? And I think that's the key question. Why would an organization that's born out of just needing a tool, a vehicle to get resources to farmers, focus on land and land tenure? And the one thing that we noticed as we kept talking, farmer after farmer after farmer, was that land tenure was not secure, and when there was land, there was not a formal tie to land. And that leads to living in constant fear, that leads to land speculation, that leads to displacement. So, and that becomes a huge hurdle when people start to say, I want to go back to the land. I want to be able to farm. I want to be closer to my family, to my community, but there's no way that we can move back. So we realized that we needed to have access to land, and we need to have formal access to land for all of our farmers. Okay? So right now, another thing that we noticed is that as you have formal land tenure and you decrease anxiety and you decrease fear, you decrease that constant sense of losing what you have at any moment, people invest more and people innovate more in their land, in the farm, and you have more creative methods, and some of them are terrible failures. I'm constantly failing at everything. But out of every 99 failures, you have one that's a hit out of the park, right? So, and that's a key part of surviving in the land. That's a key part of surviving in the farms. That experimentation, constant, pushing that barrier, pushing those boundaries. So another thing is that by anchoring people within the land, you're restoring that land. And this is one of the stories that I love most after Maria. There was a lot of community kitchens that popped up all throughout Puerto Rico, and that was amazing. But the coolest thing was like 3 weeks after the hurricane, where there were still all of our boxes and all of the food at the port. 3 weeks, farmers already had sprouts and were ready to give away lettuce and give away other kinds of food because the soil was so rich with a diversity of seeds, with richness ready for whatever seed came from the hurricane and sprouted there. And they were able to distribute that to the community kitchens, whether it was for free or with support from diaspora to get it, to get some exchange, some economic exchange. As I mentioned, the patchwork, protecting biodiversity, a practical path towards reparations. And this is really important, the layers and the complexities of the colonial structure imposed not only in Puerto Rico, but to the Caribbean in general. The fact that we go through an Irma, Maria, Dorian, Eta, Iota, and we cannot help each other because the empire said so, is unforgivable. We, as the Caribbean, have been one region since it started to be populated. Our cultures, our seeds, our foods mixed together. And all of a sudden we're told we cannot have that anymore. So we are owed. And this is part of that reparations process. So, in addition to having land rights as part of preparation for climate extremes, as part of reparations, there is also the fact that now it is more important than ever. And this image here, ¿tú te acuerdas, Marissa, de dónde es esta imagen? Humacao. So this is the new fad in Puerto Rico, which is solar farms. So we've changed land codes to allow for this in agricultural lands. We know it is not compatible use, but it is there and it is being used. And hundreds of acres are being destroyed with each one of these projects that gets seeded. And every time, and Marissa will talk to you about that later, every time we've gone up to the courts, we've lost because they changed the regulations to accommodate for that. So how do we secure it when we know the government is not only not in our favor, it is actively working against us. So we need to have our own resources. The second thing is, we have been doing research through the Institute, looking at how climate extremes in the Caribbean are being used to push policy that doesn't necessarily affect us immediately, but now 8 years later, it's working to displace us, or it's working against us, jumping up the prices of land and further displacing us from our homes. So that is one of the things that we've realized, is that we cannot count on any policy, because while we were huddling down and the Barbudans were huddling in Antigua, they changed the laws so that we couldn't hold land anymore. They changed the law so we couldn't protect the land anymore. And if they won't, we have to do it. And lastly, and this is to me the most beautiful thing about part of the work that we've done, how many of you have heard that Puerto Rico was a social experiment? That we were the showcase of the Caribbean? So instead of that, we have now, within the Caribbean, the opportunity to lead the charge for saving humanity as a species. We have the most climate extremes in the Caribbean per land area. And we have the opportunity to learn, to experiment, and that needs investment. That requires resources to do that research, to see how we can best hold on, to see how much land is needed to feed this many people, all of that. And it can be in our hands instead of being lab rats. We are the ones saying, work with us, let's do this together, let's learn together. So, what are we launching today? So, we are working 3 tracks. And this is the commercial part of the presentation. We are working 3 tracks. So the idea is to be able, the campaign works towards the growth pods, so Ullama, maintaining the operations, helping sustain the operations for the farms, comprehensive community accompaniment. And here, it sounds very complex, but for example, we've learned, and Francisco will talk about it later, things that threaten farmers go from domestic violence, to health issues, mental and physical health, to your neighbor having a digger go to your farm and removing everything you planted for the last 10 years. And most lawyers will not touch that with a 10-foot pole because they don't know, because they're scared, because they're not gonna make money, because you have a losing track in court. So we need to have a comprehensive way to approach each one of the situations so that if we're solving the domestic violence issue, how else or what else needs to be there to sustain so that we can all stay in the farm and keep building community. And lastly, like I said, rapid response, legal defense, and collective community tenure models. And that has been incredibly difficult. And we know the state, as the US is built, is individual land titles, and that's what makes you a person. You exist in front of the state when you have a title. How do we change that? And how do we change that when we have sometimes 3 generations down the line, 200 inheritors later, in the same plot of land? How do you divide it? There's no way to divvy it up. Okay, so we need to start thinking differently. And that's Francisco's assignment. And this way. So our goal, those are our 3 areas of work. Our goal is $10 million. So my invitation to you is to help us get there. How do we get to 10 million? And that 10 million is divided 50%, 5 million, strictly going to land. Everything else, the other 5 million, is going to accompaniment. And what do we call that? You can see their community organizer is almost 30% of the supporting, because that's the supporting structure. That's the one, and you'll see that in a little bit. For example, buying the land, which by the way, it's not that I like buying my land back. That sucks. But we need to do it. And we have to do it because we have to stay ahead of the curve, right? But that's not the only method. We have other mechanisms like usucapión. Usucapión is when you have lived in the same plot of land for 30 years. You can go to the state and you can say, I've lived here in good faith for the past 30 years. This belongs to me. And you go to court and that is recognized. And then the court does nothing. Or the state registry department does nothing. ¿Cómo se dice? Property registry. I don't know how to translate that, but they don't do anything. So you've been there 30 years. You did your due diligence. You went and you got the paper recognized by the judge and the tribunal and the courts. And yet you have no title to your name. And you're still at the same risk as if you hadn't done any of that. So who's the one that holds the hand of the farmer when they receive those news? Who's the one that goes with them to the crime, to the municipal tax office to support them. And that's why we invest on having community organizers with us so that they can be there and be that support, whether it's emotional or physical, with them, whether it's going to the market so that they can have a sale for that month. All of that is that community organizer, is that 30% that you see there. And the rest is all the bureaucratic crap that we're forced to do. So the legal fees, just a donation for land costs a lot of money. We just bought a farm for a family of 5, and that farm got reappraised. After we bought it, after we signed the title, we bought it, it got reappraised, and it got rezoned. Again, after we bought it, and we're getting back taxes 5 years back. So we're being told that we owe the government $20,000 for a reappraisal that they did after we had closed out the deal. And it is our duty to charge the previous owners. And those are things that farmers face constantly, changing landscape for laws, changing rules whenever we think we figured it out. So we need someone that's supporting, we need that administrative support, we need that insurance for the farms so that we can secure all of our farmers. And I'm going really slow because otherwise my voice cracks. So I'm gonna try to go faster because we got a whole bunch of things to cover. So the campaign is not a one-off and the campaign is not closed, but it is also not open to everyone, everything, and anything under the sun. We have 3 major groups that have worked with us for decades. El Josco Bravo, Escuela de Agroecología, Agroecology School, they have over 1,500 graduates of El Josco Bravo. Organización Boricua that has had hundreds of members over the past 30 years. And IALA with its own programs. And each one of those people that have participated in any of those 3 can say, hey, my neighbor is facing this threat. Or so-and-so is facing a threat that they will not be able to sustain the farm, and this farm is important to our network. This farm is important to our community. So that's the first step, and that triggers the needs assessment. Whether it's a legal necessity, whether it's a health, organizational necessity, we activate that accompaniment process. So it could be Suheili Torres, who's our social worker and manager for communities. It could be Francisco Vargas, who's our lawyer, or it could be Gina Malia, she's a registered nurse and she's working the health program with us. And then we start the process of getting the land secured. And it can happen in many ways, and I'll talk about it. But the one that's the most encouraged is collective land stewardship. So it is a comprehensive program. It is networked and rooted in years and years of accompaniment with Puerto Rican farmers and talking to farmers. It is farmer-led. Our advisory board is the one that tells us where they need us, where they want us to go, how they want us to get there, all the way down to our mission, as you saw. Our strategic plan was with them. We've been working for 3 years on that strategic plan, which we're hoping will come out in February 2026. And of course, we have been able to secure millions of dollars to get the land into the hands of farmers. So far, this is a summary, 4 million, and this is not yet this was not being public, now we're being public. But so far, $4 million, more than 300 acres of our land for us, by us. More than 15 families, and many of them, this is the first time that they have secure housing, the first time that they have a home that's made of cement that can withstand a freaking hurricane. And we have been able to work with more than 900 people that have had guaranteed income or guaranteed security. Francisco will talk more about that. And this is what it looks like. Now, here's the thing about this image. This is collective land tenure. Those are our 300 acres all throughout the main island. Hopefully soon we'll have a little bit more somewhere in other islands. But this constellation, each one of those stars is, and I'm gonna cite a farmer. He was working with us, And he was in one of the land trust meetings, and he's usually very quiet. He's usually not that he's not incredibly participatory. And he says, we asked a prompt question about, what are you most excited about? And he was like, because we're finally going from my farm to our land. And this is our land. If they go after any one of these stars, after any one of these farmers, they're going after all of us. And we will protect it that way. And that came up with the ice rates when they started. We have different kinds of people in these stars. Gender, migratory status, all of it. And the first thing that happened the night after the ice rates started was my phone blowing up with messages saying, yo, my house, anyone you need to put in here. That is the level of awareness of those people that are starting to build their own governance for mutual aid. So, and that's, you'll see more of that. You'll see more of that. So I need to speed it up really quick. So I'll let Francisco talk about this because it took 8 years, but the one thing I'm going to talk about here is the InterAmerican Law School had a program working with farmers, with fisher folk. And that program ran out of funding and ran out of person. So we were able to join with the InterAmerican Law School and actually get one hire. Here he is. And we have been able not only to sustain the rights of fisher folk, but add agrarian rights to the work of InterAmerican Law School. Comedores Sociales, how many of you have heard of Comedores Sociales? Comedores Sociales got a donation from the Land Access Campaign, and you'll hear here from Colibrí for Hacer, who also benefited and had funding for the campaign. Comedores Sociales, not only has it become a space of safety, of distribution for farmers, this was an international brigade. Like the first time Via Campesina went to Puerto Rico, and it was in Comedores Sociales. So these spaces, movement infrastructure, become home to all of us. And as we have security, we can take more risks. We invest. We are in love with that land again. We seek ways of what to do, what's exciting about doing with the land. So, thanks to Samantha Josein Rivera's help with the agroecology school support, La Timonera was born, and it was a land that was about to be lost next to a farmer that does ox-driven animal traction, I think it's called, right? Does animal traction, and La Escuela La Timonera, a school specifically for people working with animals again, is being carried out at one of the farms at the Land Trust. We're still under threat, and this is the most important. This is the one thing I want you to take with you. There's the happy, and we've done amazing work with amazing people that have their hearts and their minds on this, and their souls are committed to having a better future for all of us. But the threats keep piling up, and they keep piling up with policy changes, with racism in the government that's now written in policy, with no FEMA. So how are we going to face that next climate disaster? And in Puerto Rico in particular, agroecology is not recognized as a form of production because it includes a political position, because it doesn't have the minimum monoculture that they require, that they think is necessary. So the threats are still there. We have not been able to remove them. I'm still getting phone calls and messages every week. Families, moms saying, this is the third time I have to move in 2 months. We're getting evicted by the end of this month. And all I can say is I'll add you to the wait list. So this is why we decided to go public, even though it still feels weird. But we need your support and your commitment on this, especially now that philanthropic sector in terms of after disaster has contracted again. And this is important. After a disaster, everyone helicopters in and floods in and it's like, what do you need? I'm here for you. And then 7 years later, it's like, bye. That cycle cannot be what sustains us because we're dependent on the next hurricane, on the next climate extreme to survive. And that's not healthy for anyone. That's not something I would wish on anyone. So that's one thing. That cycle for Puerto Rico, we're right on it right now. It's the downside of that philanthropic burst. And then on top of that, there was a natural philanthropic contraction. And now we have current government. For our institution alone, for the Agroecology Institute alone, new government policies have led to the loss of $500,000. And that's just for us. ACER has gone through the same thing. Taller Salud has gone through the same thing. All of us have faced this. And then in a space where we have so little resources, when you cut down even more, what does that mean for that stability for farmers that we were talking about? So you can invest on restoration, environmental restoration, improve livelihoods for all of our families, and specifically relearning governance. And that is something that we don't talk enough about. We have learned to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, not necessarily ask for help, even though we love mutual aid. And we have learned and been taught a specific type of democracy that's focused on, one, representation by someone somewhere, and every so often, whenever they call you to the polls, right? Well, you cannot expect people to grab and govern themselves from one day to another when all I've known is a representative, every now and then type of democracy. So this land trust has become a space to practice our own ways of governing. How will we talk to each other? What is allowed? How do we build our own guidelines in order to live together and protect the land and protect each other? So these are spaces of practice that can be scaled out and need to be replicated within the rest of the Caribbean. And I invite the US to do it too, but I know that there's other issues going on here. So, ways to partner. And here I'll shut up, but I needed to get out of there. Ways to partner. So we have some anchor institutions that have for years held us. Catali, Grassroots International, thank you for your support. And you can keep supporting us. Land grants, different types of support that are sustained and the large amounts that can easily be turned into families with secure housing. That's the easiest one, and I know not necessarily everyone is there. Rapid response allies. Emergency funding that comes directly and immediately, and if it needs to, como se dice, saldar una deuda, cancel a debt, for example, that comes up. Program partners, land rights, the growth pods, and program partners, we've had CERNA support us a lot through this process in operations and in Ullama in particular, and Diaspora Solidarity. We have started, and we'll see how that goes, kind of a monthly thing on PayPal that it can deduct on its own, and I'm sure some of you know better than me, but you can sign up and have, hey, I want $10 every month out of whatever, my bank account. So these are 4 ways in which you can partner with us. And please feel free to scan. Here's the PayPal link to the donations. In the chairs, you have a couple of things. We'll do the pledge form at the end. But you also have a sticker and that art. This art was made by Romy Torrico, and it was actually thanks to CERNA through illustrating progress. So Romy Torrico did this beautiful art for us, and we're working on how we'll have a follow-up with you guys. Please help us spread the word. But most importantly, I want you guys to listen and to hear from 3 of the ways that we have been able to secure access to land. One of them, and we're going to start with Francisco, for, haha, that's you. Sí. Todo tuyo.
Katia. I'll put this here real quick. I'm a bit more static. I'll just grab it. It's okay. So good afternoon, everybody. Good night. How's everybody doing? Yeah. I'm pretty excited. It's my first time at the forum. Like Katia mentioned, my name is Francisco Vargas Alcántara. I'm an attorney from and based in Puerto Rico. that works with farmers and fishers back in the archipelago. I've had the honor of working with farmers and fishers for 2 years now. This is actually my first job as a lawyer. I've only been a lawyer for about 2.5 years. And as you can see, I don't usually attend to my clients in an office. I have to get my hands dirty a lot of times. I have to get on boats. This is me picking coffee on one of the lands the IALA has been able to secure with our community land trust. This, right, is all thanks to a collaboration, like Katia mentioned, between the Puerto Rico Institute for Agroecology and the InterAmerican University of Puerto Rico's Legal Aid Clinic, specifically the Rights to the City project, known in Spanish as Proyecto de Ciudad. So the collaboration that funds my position is established in the context of Puerto Rico's ongoing displacement crisis. As you will see throughout this presentation, displacement in Puerto Rico is not necessarily limited to the housing sphere. I know the first thing that tends to come into mind when we talk about displacement is housing, but displacement can be seen across other sectors like fishers and farmers and having the same end result. There's a case of fishers who are in constant threat of being displaced from what we call villas pesqueras. In English, they call them fishing villages that are located in proximity to the coastline, and it's in place where fishers congregate and organize themselves, where they have lockers to store their instruments, where they have establishments where they can sell their fish, what we call cafeterias, right inside the villas pesqueras, and where they have access to an exclusive dock for commercial fishers, an obvious attraction to speculators who are looking to privatize our beaches and coastlines. We have the case of small agroecological farmers that don't own the land they're working on and are often evicted after years of work because the owners suddenly decided to sell the land to foreigners who are swarming the island and buying properties in cash, sometimes for 5 times the price, maybe more. So just to sum up this preamble real quick, this collaboration brought together the Rights to the City project, which is also comprised of 2 additional lawyers and a social worker. Also, we have students assigned, pro bono students, in our attempt to get more lawyers into this type of field. And IALA-PR with the respective work with farmers to create me or my community lawyer position, however you want to look at it, right? And provide legal representation to farmers and fishers at no cost to them. Is it this one? So what does fisher legal support look like in Puerto Rico? I included some photos here to help demonstrate some of my work. First photo on our left is a meeting we had in the Fishers of Parguera, the Asociación de Pescadores de la Parguera. It's a hot spot right now. You might have heard of it in the news. We've been helping them with some major issues regarding the tenancy of the Villa Pesquera. And to get some context, these villas pesqueras are owned by the Department of Agriculture and are supposed to be exclusively for commercial fishing use. Our law states, surprisingly, that if the department were to lease these facilities, it has to be to commercial fishing organizations for a term of 5 years. The department can only lease it to a municipality for a maximum of 3 years if there aren't any interested commercial fisher organization, and it can't be for more than 3 years. So it has, and the municipality also needs a notarized list of fishers supporting that leasing agreement. So it's pretty progressive when you come to think of it, right? Like in spite of all the laws we're seeing recently. We first represented 2 of their oldest fishers who had a restraining order filed against them by a local businessman who was illegally occupying part of the Villa Pesquera. That local businessman was granted a temporary restraining order that meant that these 2 fishers that have been at this for more than 50 years couldn't access the facilities or fish or earn their income for 2 whole weeks. When the restraining order was finally attended to on its merits in a hearing, we had it thrown out, obviously. These 2 fishers were then sued for damages by the same businessman in an effort to get them to leave. We wound up litigating that case for about a year. Initially, we won in the inferior courts, what we call Tribunal de Primera Instancia. The businessman then elevated this lawsuit to the appellate court, and in short, we won there too. This businessman, who wasn't even a fisher, was eventually evicted, right? So those are those small wins, when an eviction was necessary. So the other issue we're working on with the fishers from La Parguera is to secure their legal tenancy. Unfortunately, back in 2023, the Department of Agriculture leased the Villa Pesquera to the municipality of Lajas behind the fishers' backs for a 15-year term, way more in excess of the 3 years the law permits. And like I mentioned before, right, the department can only lease the facilities if there aren't interested commercial fishing organizations and for a max term of 3 years. So in this case, there was an interested organization and the term is 5 times the ones permitted by law. So after further investigation, we found out that the Parguera fishers weren't the only ones having this problem. In fact, there was a Villa Pesquera in another town called Tua Baja that had been leased for 30 years. So it was worse. So what we did was we worked with FEBDEMAR, which is the Federación de Pescadores y Defensores del Mar, the Federation of Fishers, which is the National Coalition of Fishers. And we prioritized this fight to have these illegal contracts canceled. So after much work, about a month ago, we were told by the Department of Agriculture that they were sending formal letters to all mayors whose municipalities lease these villas pesqueras, notifying them of their contracts being canceled. That was really recent. So the second photo right here is with the fishers of Crash Boat in Aguadilla, Puerto Rico, is the northwest corner. Unfortunately, after Maria, their Villa Pesquera was destroyed. That's why you can see they have like a type of a trailer and with the deck. So they haven't had their usual place to sell and store their fish since the passing of Hurricane Maria. So they've been trying to work from this container that was donated to them and that has all the works, it has the solar panels, it has rain containment, instruments, etc. Notwithstanding, they haven't been able to resume operations because they don't have the permits to operate the trailer. They can meet there, they can sit there with us, but they can't sell their fish. So it's ridiculous. So we asked the Department of Agriculture to apply for these permits, which in turn is with the Department of Natural Resources, another agency, and they told us last year that the fishers had to do that. Like they were asking the fishers to apply for a specialized permit on a coastline. So you guys can know how difficult that is. So we were tired of waiting and suddenly became experts in permits and helped them apply for these really complicated permits. Just after years of this work, right, just last week we were informed that we have fulfilled all the necessary requirements and the permit is in the process of being written right now. So we can safely say that there's soon a party in Aguadilla. Yeah. Here, this one goes to what Katia said that she was gonna leave me with. So after Maria, the U.S. Department of Commerce conducted a study and concluded that the losses were estimated in $12 million. So that was what NOAA assigned. They assigned $12 million. So up until 2024, the fishers hadn't received 1 cent. And that wasn't the only problem, right? When you looked at the spending plan of the $12 million, they were only going to be assigned $400,000 of the $12 million. The rest were going to go to contract, some type of studies, to buy equipment that wasn't even related to the disaster recovery from Maria. So we first had to sue the Department of Natural Resources, which had this money in a bank since 2019, to know what had happened to that money. And it turns out they were spending money, they were using money on contracts, they were buying jet skis. It was ridiculous. So we were also taking into consideration, right, what was going to happen to that money. It's federal. That was around October. Like, we weren't being ignorant to the fact of what was going to happen to that federal money if it wasn't spent soon. So we pumped the pressure up. This is us at a public hearing with the Senate, with the Puerto Rico Senate. This is a manifestación, a protest with over 100 fishers that went to say, hey, we need this money, and it's now. After a much much complicated fight because, like I mentioned, we first needed for NOAA to amend the spending plan, like because the ask wasn't just to disburse the money. No, we need the spending plan to be amended for it to be disbursed. All of this when we're against the clock. So it wasn't until March, around 10 days before the deadline, that the funds were finally disbursed. Here, it's not the best photo, I have to mention, and I'll explain why. And there's something behind this, right? So even though the fishers finally got the checks, the governor, who had been part of the problem, said that she was handing out the checks. So a victory can look really different in different ways, but still, we know what we did. Puerto Rico know what we did. The fishers, most importantly of all, know what we did, and that's what matters. So farmer legal support, how much? No, I was gonna ask time. How much? I'll say okay. No, it's okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. So, how does farmer legal support look? So, with regards to farmers, like Katia mentioned, a lot of this work was starting from scratch. With fishers, I was building on some relationships, but here I was just starting from scratch and really getting to know this developing agroecological movement that is mostly comprised of young farmers who are working towards owning the land they're working on, that have informal arrangements sometimes with relations to the farm, and are really sometimes recognized by the state as farmers. So among the first things I had to do was just build trust with a lot of these farmers, especially with the older ones. They're really reluctant to work with lawyers. They had to see me sweat. They had to see me get my hands dirty. A lot of times what I would do is I would form part of what we call brigadas and then introduce myself. And then introduce myself because even when they needed the help, they were like, lawyers, I've had really bad experiences with them. So farmer cases vary heavily. Most common issues are with neighbor disputes regarding property lines and boundaries, like Katia mentioned. We have cases where new neighbors, it tends to be new neighbors, the new neighbors, the foreigners that come into town, they come with their bulldozers, they take away historically called puntos, because the property lines aren't always fences. And you can say, you talk with old folks, the property line is a mango tree, right? That's a pare mango. And if that doesn't exist anymore because the neighbor took it down, or let's say Maria changed the landscape, right, then it's a problem. So there's a growing need for land surveyors like we have seen, and funds to pay them also. So like I mentioned, and a lot of these cases, the themes vary. It's more client-specific than theme-specific. I can give you guys specific examples of things that aren't directly related to farm law, but that affect my client's livelihood. So I have a couple of examples I want to mention. I have one of my clients is this couple of farmers. They're in their 70s, and they had their electricity bill up to $5,000. So but what happened? They don't even have electricity because after Hurricane Maria, they were left with the electricity, and the state didn't even bother to connect them back. So, and this is something I've had to admit to myself, even though I didn't want to. This is something that my clients are always telling me. It's not the same when I ask for something than when you ask for something. Especially in Spanish, when you have to say licenciado first. It's at the beginning. So they had gone to the state offices, when it was Prepa, when it was Luma. They had made the calls, and they told them, no, there's nothing you can do. 7 years has passed, you have to pay that. But if I go and I threaten and I say, don't you see there's no meter running? You can see the consumption, it's zero. 7 years, and I'm taking you to court. I'll just say anything, And thankfully, that case in particular, the debt was but it was taken out. Have this other case where one of our farmers had his truck stolen. it was no, it was not fun. The truck finally shows up a year after, and when they call him to identify the car, they tell him that he can't have it. He can't have it back because they kind of tricked him and with certain questions to say that some of the parts weren't original. So after further investigation, right, I found out that a lot of these cops benefit from confiscated items, especially vehicles, and they have certain benefits, and that the cop that was in charge of this certain investigation had a farm. So I was like, this ain't a coincidence. So I had to make a couple of calls. I had to drive a couple of hours to the station. I had to explain. I obviously had to threaten. I obviously had to say, I'm a lawyer. And everybody just starts. Everything gets solved like real fast. And this last case, right, like Katia mentioned, we also see domestic violence cases, right? And that obviously affects the livelihood of our farmers. I work with this specific case where we helped this farmer get a restraining order against her aggressor. That restraining order was violated, and when she went to the police station, the police is saying that it wasn't. So I had to call the station. Yeah, it's crazy. So I had to call the station and say, "Why, are you a lawyer or something? You can't be saying that. Who's that decision up to?" And he says, "It's mine." No, it's not yours, it's the prosecutor. He told me I already consulted the prosecutor. So I'm like, you know what? I forgot to tell you, I already spoke with the prosecutor. And she's coming downstairs to talk with you. So if a lawyer many times doesn't intervene, then things just stay there, and it's ridiculous. Another thing I wanted to mention as a logro, right, an achievement of, we had written up a community sustainable agriculture agreement, a CSA, that to our understanding is novel, at least in Puerto Rico, a written one. We have model contracts so our fishers and farmers can learn about this contract so they don't go in with blank. I know farmers that have written up manuscript contracts with their landlords. It's crazy. Here I have some photos regarding at least my role in the land access campaign. This is Marissa right here. She's going to be talking with you guys soon. So as Katia mentioned, we helped create a community land trust focused on agricultural land, and up to date 300 acres have been purchased or donated by the land trust for it to be used for farmers, who then pass on to be a part of the land trust board of directors. So my role is pretty interesting, right? I don't have really specific instructions of what I have to do. I'm like the get things done guy. Like every case has a particularity. I just have to assess, so we're buying this land, so we need this, and this regarding paperwork. Sometimes it's on our end, sometimes it's on their end, but I do it anyways because we need to get this done. I have to negotiate contracts that say what we call contratos de opción to get things done. I have to talk with, sometimes the sellers are, second generation owners, like they're inheritors. They're different generations, so I have to talk to all of them. Like in this case, there were 3 sisters, so I had to talk to the 3 sisters when I was negotiating a contract, an option contract. I had to speak to every one of them. I have to hand my cell phone number to everybody. I'll be receiving calls on Sunday. What does this clause mean? What does this clause mean? What does this clause mean? So this second photo is with our friend Bill. He was actually the first donation for the land trust. He donated 30 acres of land to the community land trust. He's we were talking about Bill the other day. Yeah, he's somebody that we explained the process of the community land trust. He's staying there, like he's actually gonna live there. He's trusting us. He donated this land. He's like, look, we're up for their mission. That's a really peculiar case because he lives in a town of Las Marias, and he couldn't go to the metropolitan area where the notary is, the 3rd person there. So I actually called the 4th person, that's a friend of mine who has a law office in Lares. I'm like, hey, can I use your office? So that's part of my role there too. Yeah, that's all with me. I know I'm way over my time. I want to thank everybody again for being here, and I hope to answer any questions. Afterwards, feel free to.
So we didn't have the
No, we have our own notary. Because part of the experience was we've worked with other lawyers, and like I mentioned, we have a bad rep. We have our own form.
Does the legal, as far as the laws in place, represents his area? Does it go as far as where he lives?
I don't understand the question.
Where he lives, he was unable to find a notary, right?
No, I'm sorry. Is that we have our own notary to close deals? Yeah.
How far back can that particular law that is in place?
There, yeah, it could be like 40 minutes. Yeah, that could be easily 40 minutes. Yeah, it's pretty far up. Yeah, I mean that's him right there. That's Bill right there. Yeah, so you can imagine. And that's me and my colleague Jarelise in Orocovis.
There's no laws there.
Yeah. So that's me.
Thank you so much. And gracias, Francisco, for everything. Especially those calls like Sundays. We're like, we need to get this done. I wanted to mention, in addition to thank you, and thank the InterAmerican University School of Law for helping us birth this program. And the next one that we're going to be talking about is movement infrastructure. So we've gone through the land rights program, and that receives funding and is financed by the Land Rights Campaign, but also we get to do donations to at particular points in time to different groups that are doing movement infrastructure. And one of the people that has taken a huge gamble on us, on collective tenure, on movement infrastructure that's collectively managed and that we can together build and have it available in the metro area, Colibrí Sanfiorenzo is going to talk to us about this. Señorita.
Hola. Pues mi nombre es Colibrí. My name is Colibrí. I'm the director and founder of ACER. As Katia says, we're an organization that got formed before Hurricane Maria with the goal of doing shared infrastructure and resources. And before Hurricane Maria, we knew it was important. I'm an ecologist, so I come from an ecology background, and I ended up changing up from going out into the forest with the kids to doing back-end work. And I would just start doing letters or budget. And all of a sudden, I wasn't out anymore, and I was behind a computer. And it's like that unsexy work, right? I know many of you do that kind of work. But all of a sudden, it was really necessary. And when Hurricane Maria hit, it became even more necessary, because when you think about it, when you're underground working, you don't have time to be behind a computer. And that's basically two teams. The team that's on the ground doing the work that's really important, and that back-end team that's doing that unsexy behind the computer work, right? And when you have those two teams coming together, you can really fulfill something. And that's what sort of happened with ACER right now. We started out with 5 groups, 2017, 5 groups that said, okay, we'll do that. We've never done that before, of sharing something. We're going to be on the ground, and you guys are going to be doing the back end. And those 5 groups have turned into 19 groups. And right now, we have a network of actions that are all around the archipelago. Those 19 groups, 11 of them, we do all the back end. So we do administrative, fiscal, grant writing, communications. We also have groups that have local tax exemption in Puerto Rico, but they don't have the federal, so we also manage back-end federal funds, or sort of U.S. nonprofit funds. One of the things that really came out of sharing the back-end was that we not only wanted to share back-end, we also shared literally chairs or tables or projectors. And all of a sudden, we were sharing those little things as well, so you could do programmatic work, because maybe a group didn't have a projector, but we had one. So instead of every group buying a projector, we would share one among 10 groups. All of a sudden, what really happened was that emergency, more emergencies, more funding would come in, and it's like Katia was saying, you'd see these sort of waves of funding coming in. And in ACER, we started thinking, what does long-term saving up for infrastructure mean, right? So we ended up having, since Hurricane Maria, little by little saving this money that was coming in for long-term infrastructure. And by Hurricane Fiona, which was this, sort of, I want to say sort of one of the last PTSDs that I think everybody got, right? And Fiona came and we're like, okay, we're doing this. This is not happening. We're not having what happened to Maria happen again, right? And I think one thing that I'm very proud of Puerto Rico is mutual aid was before Hurricane Maria, ¿verdad? The basis of community work in Puerto Rico is mutual aid, right? It doesn't have to be an emergency for us to do mutual aid. The emergency is just, how do you say that, agrandado, ¿verdad? Como que the work that we do. And when Fiona hit, we decided to share more than just back-end stuff. So we really invested in trying to figure out how to share space and things. So when Fiona happened, we took the long-term money and we bought a pickup, we bought a box truck, we bought a passenger van, and we rented 2 little offices. And by 2023, we were sharing all of that with our network and our collaborators like IALA and others. And all of a sudden, it was 2023, early 2024, and we're like, okay, the dream that we had 10 years ago of having a shared space, we're going to do that now. And we started looking intentionally for about a year and a half. And I told my staff, okay, I want 12 places that had at least 12,000 square feet that can hold at least 4 organizations. It has to be in the metropolitan area because we have so many groups around the island. We needed a home base in the urban area. And I think that that's super important, even though we have spaces that are around the archipelago, having something in the urban area when something hits, it's crucial. And we went to see a lot of places that just needed a lot of work. And all of a sudden, we went to see this one place, and it just blew our mind. It was a 30,000 square foot industrialized area in the middle of Atorrey, which, whoever doesn't know, it's the financial district of San Juan. It sits on 1.3 acres of land. It's been industry for more than 40 years, and we're transforming it into really a space that's going to be housing, main offices for IALA, main offices for Maria Fund, for ACER, for Amigas del Mar, which is another partner, and for other organizations that need space. And each one of us, of organizations, is a network. So what we're hoping is for this space to actually be able to support more than 100 different groups that are doing amazing things. And even collaborators that we have that have a space but need more space, or have a space and want to do something in San Juan, this is the space for them. Right now, thanks to the Land Rights Campaign, we were able to close the gap on December 31st at 4 p.m., which is when we signed of 2024, which is crazy. But also, I think that the idea behind taking the long-term money that we were getting through all these emergencies and using it so we could have long-term, I'm here and I'm here to stay, and this is our land. And just talking about the People's Forum that we are right now, I'm excited to know that we made a good choice of purchasing a building and not renting one from the beginning, even though, we're at this stage of like, is this all going to end? How much work is it? It's 30,000 square feet. But right now, for us, it's one of those important aspects of it, of why it really matters, right? I think that one of the things that gets us together as organizations is having a safe space for us to do what we want to do, for us to grow, for us also to not have to worry in a way because we're not alone, right? And I think that right now, for us in ACER, even though the land right now is owned by ACER, we're working literally cohabiting right now the space, and we're working towards what it means to actually put this space as a land trust, as a cooperative, making that decision together to figure out how that's going to really just stay alive for 100 years, right? Can this space serve for 100 years? And in 100 years, I'm not even going to be here. So how can this space serve the little kid that's right there, right? And it still serve that community of what we want right now. I think that one of the biggest things, and this is, you can see the building from the outside, it's so huge that when you go there, your dreams are that big, and you just start thinking of everything that could happen. I'm gonna go back a moment here. This space over here in the bottom, it's a huge space, open space that has been abandoned for about 15 years in that area. And when people go into that space, they all dream different things, but they all say one thing: let's keep it this open because we can do a lot of stuff, right? So having that dream of everybody going to the place and dreaming with us is really what sort of pushes us to what we want, right, and what we're looking for. I think that one of the most important things for us right now is trying to figure out how to sustain it, right? And I think the land rights campaign and just sort of really trying to figure out how to make this possible. And this is super como dicen, como medio quickly done. Pero our phase one was purchasing the building. So December 31st, 4 p.m., we were able to purchase the building. That's ahoo. Phase two, it's shared offices. We have a communal workspace. We're doing a kitchen. And that phase two is taking much more than we thought. And it's thanks to everybody who's there, who's putting in that little thing, that little dollar, but also that time, right? And I think that one of the things that I'm learning is that one way to really work together is how do you also do things that are not cash-based, that can support the process of maintaining a place like that, and then also do things that are just cash-based, like you got to pay Luma, and you got to pay Acueducto, and you got to pay the bank. But what are the other things that we can do together that are not cash-based, right? So how do we combine that? And if there's 100% of expenses, how we can make 25% of that really be that mutual aid, and then 75 actually be that cash aspect of it. The phase three, which is a storage and programmatic area, it's huge and we love it. And it's at a stage right now that it's super dirty. It's been abandoned, so it needs cleaning up. But it's a place to dream. And some of the dreams that have come up with more than one group independently. So I love seeing dreams connect even though people don't know each other, and when they say the same thing. So they want communications, and they want to do podcasts, and they want to do videos, but they also want to have a food hub, and they want to be able to put stuff in storage when an emergency comes, or they want to be able to do a farmer's market, or they want to be able to do a programmatic activity. So when you have all those dreams that are independent because people don't know each other, but they're all talking about the same dream, it just makes me like want it more and more and more. And I think being part of it, part of a collective that has that idea and that thought is what's really como lo que me mueve. I'm not sure how to say that in English, but look, what moves me. I have my half brain, half English right now. So where are we at right now, right? So right now, we're in this moment where we need funds to transform it into community space because it's very industrialized. But at the same time, we have a lot of support from a lot of groups that are in our network, but also the network of IALA, Maria Fund, Amigas del Mal, and all our collaborators. I think that this space has the ability for us to really have a huge impact in Puerto Rico. And we have the, ¿cómo se dice eso? La energía, the energy and the commitment as a whole group of networks, right? So, and even como que Departamento de la Comida, when groups are networks and those networks come together, it's what really makes that ecosystem strong. And when you think of ecology, it's where I come from, you think that it's not about the organizations, it's about the interactions among the organizations that's really gonna make that change. And when you have multiple interactions happening with and among groups, if one group maybe doesn't have so much this year, the other groups can strengthen, right? So it doesn't depend on just one group, and depends on those interactions, and that's what we're betting on. So please support the Land Rights Campaign, support our buildings, support the groups in Puerto Rico who are just working together for a more strong ecosystem. Gracias.
Okay, so we are down towards the end. And I know some of you have had to leave, some of you have come in, so thank you for being here. I wanted it to end today with what is the heart of the work that we do, and with the voice of one of my teachers and colleagues and amazing woman energy and just a driver and organizer supreme. So please welcome Marissa Reyes from Finca Guakiá to close us out.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I will try to be very fast just to make sure to have time also for the questions or any doubts that you have. But Finca Guakiá burns in 2015 with the idea how we do agroecology in a collective way. And in 2015, we don't have access to land. We were looking in 2017, before the hurricane hit, we find a piece of land rented, and we start to clean up a lot of trash getting out from the land because it was almost like a illegal landfill. So the beginning was just to clean area, and then hurricane hit, and we thought that let's do the land, and then the people from the community came. But when the hurricane hit, that doesn't matter. So we just focus on community, and we start building a relation with that piece of land that give us a relationship between us as a collective, but also with the community, building relations and support each other. And then in 2022, things were getting worse, and the security in the space getting worse, and we cannot be alone at the land. We were two women, Stephanie Monserrate and myself. And at the same time, the owners of the land said, we need to sell. And this is in the rich part of the island, in Dorado, and we cannot pay that. We were already talking about how we can build a better, secure space for the farmers that are doing a lot of work, teaching, but at the same time producing food, making space for the community, and then we lose the land. It was a very depressed moment, and we start to look more than 20 visits of farm, and then we found this beautiful place that was the mentioned Francisco, the three sisters that sing with us. Then we have a table full of women that were in transition. They don't want that the land pass to something that is not from what her dad do, that was farming. When we arrive, when we see the house, so we don't have to pay rent because we have a house, so we moved together today, but at the same time have avocado trees, have coconuts, have yautía, have bananas, plantains, have a lot of things over there, and we say, this is the place. After looking a lot, this is the place. And we start all the process, and for us was very special. And when we moved the last year. We just have been 1 year, maybe 3 months more, and was very powerful, was very, very powerful, and at the same time, a lot of responsibility, because we know that I cannot feel complete until everybody is safe. So for me, was at the same time, this is beautiful, I love it. I want to keep farming. I want to keep doing education process. And actually, right now, the farm is open for volunteers that want to learn from farming. We do workshops. We do collaboration with neighbors that have the same values of us. So we are building community again in a place that we can stay forever, that we can put our roots there. And at the same time, I have the time to focus in other things, not just in production. We are building like a mosaic, beautiful, of production of food, but at the same time, I have the time, because I am secure, to do the advocacy, and the access to land is not just for me, it's for our people, it's for our community. So I can raise my voice in other places because I know that I'm safe, but I know that a lot of people is not safe. So this is more than just securing land. It's also that I can organize for others and doing campaigns to protect the lands for the solar panels that the government still want to put it in farmland. That doesn't make sense when we have so many rooftops that we can use, or many impacted land that we can use. So our work is a lot of organizing and at the same time giving life to the land. So we do classes, we do volunteer, but we also, I am part of Organización Boricua de Agricultura Ecológica. And from there is the platform that I also try to, how we can keep connecting agroecological farmers to doing the work, to protect the land, to increase production, to increase the access for the people that are doing cooling the earth. Agroecology cools the earth. So we need to keep supporting agroecology and doing an education process to make sure that other people can see different ways. And there is a phrase that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to get, how to say it? Thank you, far, then go with others, go together. And so that's why we need to keep building relations to protect the land, to make sure that the production is not just for a few, it's for everybody, it's for the communities, it's for the land. And protect the land is not a job of a few, it's a job of many people. And we can do it in different ways. I tried to do it in education, advocacy, and farming. But I would like to stay farming and in education, you know? I am here, but it's not my favorite work. And I am happy to tell my story, but at the same time, I would like to keep doing what I know that is the cooling earth that we need to do. So that's why I am here, because I know that this land right campaign is very important for all the peoples that are in vulnerability, that was the same that I were in the past. And I don't want that people be in that suffer like me. So this is the mosaic that we build. We can experiment even in the land because we are secure. So we are trying to learn from the land and building new relations and connections with the land and producing different kinds of food and what is better for the place and what is more secure. Yeah, so more or less, thank you. I'm still learning. And I hope that this land right campaign can be supported by many in different ways, because you can cool the planet in different ways. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And yeah, I don't know if something else, but I will open for questions.
Take questions for a couple of minutes.
Okay. Sorry.
All right. Thank you for that. That was beautiful. You mentioned volunteers on your farm. I just want to know what that looked like. Is it students? Is it for a day, week, months, years? Like what's involved? And what do they do?
We do everything that is needed. Sometimes it's just collecting seeds. Sometimes it's working the land. We open every week from Wednesday to Friday, so the people can come. We do workshops on the weekends, so other people came. But normally we receive a lot of women that want to connect with the land, but in a security way. Because not always you can find that kind of space, especially in farming. And at the same time, it's very empowering looking women working the land in that deep way that you see how is the land is very abrupta, I would say. And so it's a space secure that you learn, and you don't know to do farming is okay. We do it together. We do it, and it's not common to open the farm for people that doesn't not know how to farm, because it's another work for the farmer. So take a lot of risk to teach people, but at the same time, we know that the people is very disconnect with the land. So the farming, this process like is slow, like take it easy. If you don't feel good, it's okay, just came down, we can do another job. There is many jobs to do. But the idea is to make sure that they have the space to connect with other people that want to learn also. We open all year long, but we started this year. So we are still learning from the program too, and how the people feel it. But has been very powerful place right now for the people just go to the mountains to do farming, to have a breathe space, to disconnect from the hurry of the city, from the hurry of capitalize to pay things, and just to rest, be with the land, and put my hands on soil. So more or less just like that right now, yeah.
I'm sorry, I came in a little late. Where exactly is this farm?
Yeah, I never mentioned actually. It's in the east part of Puerto Rico, in San Lorenzo, in Barrio Espino, in San Lorenzo. And actually, we have been talking a lot with DEPA because it's very close to us. So, collaborations can come.
Where is San Lorenzo in comparison to San Juan and Rio Grande?
Close to Caguas, close to in the south. Oh, yeah, we can go to the constellation. Thank you. No, we're there. So here is San Lorenzo. Caguas, San Juan, and El Yunque, Rio Grande will be here. Other questions?
Esto no es una pregunta para mí, pero quiero que lo hablen, así que voy a hacer la pregunta. Y lo voy a hacer en inglés, exacto. First off, I wanted to thank you all for speaking in English. I know it's not the language of your heart, and I want to acknowledge that, and I know it's very difficult. And yeah, this question I feel as somebody who is also, now a part of this big family, I wanted you to speak more around this land trust and what it means for our ecosystems, and in particular, the name of the land trust, and as well as securing for humans, how you're supporting non-human health.
¿Quién quiere?
¿En serio? Thank you. That is a hard question in a second language and a third. So the land trust came to being in, originally the land rights campaign was going to be, actually, we were thinking, okay, this is not just for us. This is for justice and reparations and justice for families and communities, and specifically farmers that have worked this plot of land for so long and all of a sudden they're facing eviction or they're being displaced. And thanks to Wari Sayas, who is one of right now the research director, he really looked into it, and we had talked about building a land trust, but we thought of it as one of the alternatives of potential access to land, and he was like, no. Land trust is the only one that protects it forever. It is the only one that they cannot take to court. It is the only one that they will not try to torpedo. And we did it. We took the jump and we created the Agroecology Land Trust. The name is really long. It's like 5 lines long in a deed, so I'm not even going to try to translate it. But it is an Agroecology Land Trust for research, for education, for community building. And towards Tara's question, one of the things that inspired a lot of the work that we do is that in Puerto Rico, and Puerto Rico, like I mentioned, has been a social experiment for the US, for capitalism specifically, and for decades. And one of the models that was imposed on Puerto Rico was the European conservation model. The only way to protect the forest is to get people out of the forest. And Puerto Rico was the model for that. While it was being showcased as the counterweight to what was happening with workers' rights in the Dominican Republic and Cuba and Haiti, while that instability was happening, they were showcasing capitalism, but they were also highlighting the fact that as you took poor people out of the forest grows back. But they didn't mention what that meant. And that meant getting people out of the food systems that they were familiar with. That meant getting people out of the cultural systems, the community networks that sustained them. And it didn't recognize the impact that industrial agriculture had, why the forest had been taken down in the first place. It wasn't necessarily our farmers or smallholders. It was a system of industrial agriculture that was exploiting both land and people. So with this Agroecology Trust, we're trying to weave that back together. The idea is that, for example, not all of the farms, not all of the homes are for food production. Some of them are for seed cultivation. Some of them are just for conservation. Again, that building that mosaic. And is respecting the fact that given that, like we mentioned, the government is not just ignoring us, it's not just a bad government, it's actively working against us, then the best way to protect our land and our species, our rivers, our waters, is to have people actively aware of them, actively occupying them. And it doesn't mean that I have to be standing here. It's going back to a system the same way that the Native Americans in this land used to have, in which we belong to this entirety of 300 acres, and it belongs to us, we belong to it, and we will protect it. And to me, that's one of the most beautiful things that's happening, precisely because we have had the issue with the fisher folk has been precisely because they took fisher folk out of the coastline. And then all of a sudden we have high-end housing built with permits in federal reserves that are supposed to be off limits. Had the fisher folk stayed there, that would not have happened. So we have evidence that getting people out of the land doesn't work, and we're building evidence that getting people back into the land and in the coast will protect them, and we're protecting from the mountain ridge to the coral reef.
Thank you very much. I love this presentation. Just reminded me of a phrase, if we could feed ourselves, we could free ourselves, right? And that's exactly what, all the compas on the stage are doing with their allies in Puerto Rico. Just to get a sense of the urgency of this project and what's going on in Puerto Rico, I wanted to know if you could just speak to the aggressive way that Act 60 is affecting farmland and other, and campos around Puerto Rico, that it's not just in the urban areas and the coastal areas, but I've been hearing a lot about folks coming in with suitcases of money. I think Francisco alluded to that, and buying up farms and acres of land, not just land, but also next to our rivers, next to our aqueducts and reservoirs and things like that. And in addition to that, what sort of education is being done to talk to farmers about not selling to people that are just going to be extractive and not give back in the ways that you are doing?
Pero los dos.
Yeah, so, no. I'm not gonna say anything. So, yeah, the matter is urgent. The matter is really urgent because it's not just that they're buying the land, right? Especially specific farmlands, is that they're lobbying to change the soils classification. So we have something called Plan de Uso de Terreno. So land zoning laws. So a lot of these lands, they were used to be considered suelo rústico especialmente protegido, right? It would be a developer's nightmare to buy that because they knew they couldn't be able to do anything there. A hotel, an Airbnb, nothing. But they're lobbying politicians to change the zoning laws, or they just do it with different mechanisms called, let's say, consulta de ubicación, variación de uso, these types. They look for these loopholes and they do it. So it's not just that they buy it, they lobby enough to change the classification of the laws. So I think there was a second question.
Yes. So there was about the land prices, land speculation, I believe, going towards that.
Oh, so it's obviously a hard task because we don't have the same money as those coming in to buy the land. But I think something that has helped, right, is especially with people that were farmers or that use their lands for farming, just letting them know, look, we have young farmers that are willing, that are hoping to continue your legacy, right? And sometimes, like, we've had cases of old or former farmers selling because they know that when they die, their offspring, like their daughters and sons, are gonna sell. So they prefer to sell to us beforehand, or are contemplating to do that before something happens to them because they know what's happening. They know and they understand the rationale of their daughters and sons that in much cases don't even live in Puerto Rico. So sometimes they're not even mindful of that, you know. They have this market perspective that, look, when daddy dies, we're going to sell that because we're not going to live there or whatever. So more than educating, I think it's more persuading. I think it's really, we really have to be persuasive because when it comes to educating, right, we can't make it with the money or like it's really big interest.
Really quickly, going towards that, in addition to being persuasive, which we need to be, and Juarez has been a master at some of that, there's also something about that connection. And I think that's what Francisco was alluding to as well, having that connection with a new generation. And it gives a lot of farmers towards the twilight of their years a new hope, something to dream again about. And that connection is incredibly powerful. Going towards the question about the prices and the bags of money, I mean, we will be publishing. We will be publishing soon a land report that we just did in terms of how is land being sold and bought and moving in Puerto Rico, and that's hopefully coming in the next few months. But one of the things that we found, prices per acre have gone on more than 5 times, have gone up in some cases, but the bottom doesn't go further down. So we'll see this increase, and it makes it impossible for new farmers to access land, and it makes it impossible for us to negotiate. And I think another aspect of the land situation in Puerto Rico that's not taken into consideration is not just the price of the land. Like Francisco mentioned, the surveyors. So right now, there's very few surveyors, and there's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of people coming in to buy land. So surveyors can ask for any price they want. The lawyers that are doing the closings are asking for any price they want. So it's not just that the land prices are going up, it's that anything related to a land donation, a land acquisition, or exchange, permuta, goes up by 5 or 10 times. So that's something also to take into account. Thank you for that. Is there?
Thank you. Everything that you're saying is so inspiring, and I'm so grateful to learn about everything that you're doing. I'm curious, in the land trust model, are there legal conservation easements that go along with the land? And how does that then, like, how are you utilizing those restrictions, and are they then a way to push back against some of the zoning challenges that you're finding?
Eso para. Sí.
Okay. So it actually doesn't work like the US. The Puerto Rico land trust law is a Frankenstein of Puerto Rico law, Spanish law, and then the imposed US legal system. And it is through those three that we birthed this Frankenstein of the land trust laws in Puerto Rico. So it takes components from all three. It doesn't match quite a bit to the way that, for example, I know Vermont has a whole bunch of different types of easements that can be bought or sold or negotiated, and you can use that to kind of tamp down on development, for example. It doesn't quite work that way. What we have decided to do and what we're doing so far is that it's through our collective governance, and each one of the projects will work within their space. So, for example, one of the things that we've talked about, how much of the territory can we make impermeable? It cannot be all of it. How much do we want it to be? How much are the children going to inherit? Because each project, once you get the surface deed, which is what you get as part of the land trust, that surface deed becomes enajenable, which means that you can mortgage it or you can sell it, or etc. So the land trust itself, the deed, the public deed, is our constitution. That has 66 pages written by a whole bunch of people and reviewed by a whole bunch of farmers. And it also has a whole bunch of spelling mistakes that I wasn't able to catch in time. So, but it does have our baseline of, we are not going to allow certain things. There's wholesale destruction, wholesale development, Airbnbs, short-term rentals, quick turnover. Those things are already in the deed, not allowed. And then now we're working on the bylaws together, topic by topic. And then on top of that, each one of the projects, each one of these stars is going to have their own management program developed by each project, working with the trustees. So, and the trustees are themselves one representative per project as well. I don't know. I know it's complicated. I don't know if I answered the question. Or if there's anything else I should say. Okay. So it is 8:20, and we've gone 20 minutes over what we told the People's Forum that we were going to do. But I would like to invite you all to have a piece of paper on your chair, or you sat on it, or you have it now by your side. If you can, please fill it out, and fill it out with what your heart says to you. You don't have to commit to anything today, but we would love to stay in touch with you and have your contact and know that you were here. And thank you in a couple of weeks when we rest from this process. We would kind of share your information with Acer and with Francisco and Guakiá, just so that we know that you were here and we can thank you. And I wanted to call David out here. So the People's Forum has been, like Colibrí mentioned, an inspiration for many of us for many years. We've followed the People's Forum. They've been unwavering in their support for land rights. And we would be irresponsible if we don't recognize that this is all part of a script. Moving us out of the land, moving us away from our culturally appropriate foods, for example. It's all part of a displacement process, and it makes it really easy to move in militarily. And that's what we're seeing in Palestine. And that's also something that the People's Forum has been unwavering about. And now they're starting their own campaign. Thank you. They're starting their own campaign to buy their building and rehabilitate it. So if you live in New York and you want to share their story as well, and we wanted to thank you for having us here, launching the campaign, and for your new place for you guys to have. So thank you so much. So with that, gracias David, un abrazo.
Thank you.
Gracias, gracias. Thank you for everything. Luck to you too. So, rayo, picture, pero vamos con todos porque si no, no. Dale, ¿cómo lo hacemos?
En el stage.
En el stage, ay Dios, Néstor.
We move this.
Tú en el medio. No, el póster en el medio.
Thank you.
Bueno, gente, gracias. I know that there's a whole bunch of things happening Climate Week. Thank you for being here. And please leave your pledge form with Samantha or with Nestor. So again, even if it's just your name, what you feel in your heart, we'll keep in touch. We'll keep harassing you. And there's food. Take food, please. If you need a snack, you need to recover. It's been a long day. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.